All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
And good morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. We're now less than 60 days away from Election Day in Indiana. And our commitment is to make sure that you hear directly from the candidates in the top races. One of the most closely watched races, the one for Secretary of State, the person who will oversee the elections in Indiana for the next 4 years. This morning, our Garrett Bergquist is with Democratic candidate Destiny Wells.
Let's welcome in Democratic Secretary of State nominee Destiny Wells. Destiny, thank you for joining us. I want to begin with a report out over the last few days that showed that a small number of elected officials here in Indiana were members of the Oath Keepers group at one time. Are you surprised by the number of elected officials on that list?
I'm unfortunately not surprised, and I saw those numbers myself. I saw them across the country that all states are dealing with some sort of problem like this. So I would say Indiana is not alone, but that does not mean that we should not call it out when we see it. A similar instance with neo-fascism happened this past weekend in Indianapolis, and I was one of the first to call it out, and I will continue to call it out.
Voting rights groups all across the country have expressed some concerns over whether we will be able to hire enough election workers, particularly in this environment. I did talk to some local election officials over the last few days. They told me so far their hiring is in good shape, but do you share those staffing concerns?
I've heard the same things, that staffing is looking like it's good at this moment. I, of course, though, have concerns of when we sow seeds of distrust with the election process, that the people that feel that the most are our election workers on the ground, our clerks in each of the counties. And so as Secretary of State, we have to be very responsible in how we message so that we don't detract people from helping us in the process and hosting these elections.
Your Republican opponent, Diego Morales, has in the past criticized the 2020 election. In recent months, he's walked back those comments. At this point, do you believe that he is what some would consider an election denier?
Absolutely. He is a member of the America First Secretary of State's coalition. And so, of course, he's walking that back in the moment because he's worried about the general election. But just last week, he was on the radio, and when asked if he would certify the election, he did not answer the question. He evaded the question. It's not the first time he's done that. And so, absolutely, I believe that he is a man of the words that he put in print in March, and that he is an election denier.
Should Indiana go to hand-marked paper ballots in all jurisdictions, as most other states do?
Hand-marked ballots are the safest form of hosting elections. Indiana will have some issues in getting there because of the funding mechanisms out of the State House and support from the supermajority Republican legislature. That is the federal best practice, but Indiana is going to need to put a lot of thought into improving its election infrastructure at this moment in time.
One other question. What do you say to people who might say, well, I would consider voting for you, but you are a Democrat. I don't agree with most of the things the Democratic Party stands for, and I'm concerned that you won't necessarily be independent of that. How would you respond to that?
Well, the alternative is to feed further into a candidate on the right who is not just a Republican, which I can work with Republicans. I work with them all the time. I've worked in Republican administrations, but he's a far right Republican. And so that is the problem. If you have a problem voting for a Democrat, you need to look to the individual, look to my 20 years of military service. I've always put country first, and judge us all individually.
Democratic Secretary of State nominee Destiny Wells, thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Good conversation there. We also plan to have Republican Diego Morales and Libertarian Jeff Maurer on the show in the coming weeks. We turn now to the fight over abortion. Indiana's near total ban on abortion is set to take effect on Thursday. The ACLU of Indiana has filed a second suit to stop enforcement. This one, filed Thursday, claims the abortion law violates Indiana's religious freedom law, the one championed by conservatives in 2015. The plaintiffs include 5 women and the group Hoosier Jews for Choice. They claim the law violates the religious beliefs of some faiths, including Islam and Judaism. A hearing has not been scheduled in that case. This week, we've also learned that Indiana plans to tax the student loan debt to be forgiven under President Biden's plan, and it is setting up a potential fight in next year's legislature.
You won't have to pay any federal income taxes on any student loan debt you get forgiven under President Joe Biden's plan. But the Indiana Department of Revenue says it's taxable income under state law. The issue is how Indiana's tax code lines up with the federal version. The American Rescue Plan changed the tax code to exempt from federal gross income student loans discharged under certain conditions. But state lawmakers passed a law this spring that requires you to include it in your state income.
I thought it was deplorable. I was going like, why would we do that?
President Joe Biden's plan forgives up to $10,000 in federal student loan debt. So the Department of Revenue says you could pay up to $323 in additional state income taxes. That's on top of county income taxes, up to $202 if you live in Marion County. And if you took Pell Grants, for which up to $20,000 would be forgiven, you could potentially pay an additional $1,000 depending on where in the state you live.
Now that the federal government is assisting you with this loan, that we will, as a state, tax you on those dollars that you may receive from the federal government. But yet and still, we continue to give enormous amount of tax breaks to corporations.
State Representative Greg Porter says he's working on legislation to exclude debt forgiven by the president's order from taxation. The Department of Revenue says it does not have the authority to make such changes on its own.
Why sit back and don't have a loan forgiveness at the federal level, but then come back and charge you or make you pay because you got a loan that was forgiven at the federal level? It just doesn't make sense.
I asked top Republicans on the House Ways and Means Committee for their thoughts on Porter's proposal. They did not respond before deadline. Lawmakers will begin the biennial budget session in January. The tax deadline for 2023 is April 18th. At the State House, Garrett Bergquist, Wish TV, wishtv.com, and follow us on Facebook.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team joins us to talk the Secretary of State's race. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we turn now to Indiana's best political team. Mario Mastrolamani, Hamilton County Republican Party Chairman, and Brian Gaddy, former political director for the Indiana Democratic Party. Gentlemen, good to see you. Let's start with that race for Secretary of State, if you don't mind. You heard our interview earlier today. There are recent polls showing the campaign to be incredibly close now, Brian. Can Destiny Wells win this?
Absolutely, Destiny can win. Destiny's a great candidate. And the Indiana Democratic Party, we're definitely rebuilding. We're definitely a much stronger party than we were just a few years ago. And we have the ability to compete all over the state of Indiana. And it really helps when you have a thoroughbred candidate. And we definitely have a thoroughbred candidate in Destiny Wells. Destiny is a great candidate. She's a veteran. She's an attorney. And when you look at her opponent, Diego Morales, just has a very sleazy business and political background. So, yes, Destiny can win, and she will win.
Mario, your thoughts on these polls?
You know, I hate the mudslinging that Brian's doing, sleazy business practices. You know, I don't.
The truth hurts, doesn't it?
I don't really trust these polls. You know, our internal polls show
because you're losing. That's why you don't trust them.
Diego's going to win by 7 to 10%. You know, no one knows of who the Democrat candidate is outside of Marion County. If you go to some of the outlying counties, no one has any idea who she is. Diego is going to, 4, 5, 6 counties in one day. He's put 175,000 miles in the last year and a half, traveling the state of Indiana, going to all 92 counties. His opponent can't say that. He has a plan of making sure that we stay, and protect elections. Not only is he focused on elections, but also, there's other divisions that is under the purview of the Secretary of State's office. He's working and building a platform to make sure that we are focused on our securities law. That impacts.
Diego Morales is an election denier. He still believes that Donald Trump won the 2020 election.
That's not what he said.
He's a Trump acolyte.
But Brian, is it my turn to talk? Or
you've been talking a lot, so just hurry up and get finished, buddy. You're not going to filibuster.
All right. Let's be nice. Mario, go ahead.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, per the interruption of Brian, that Diego's raised historic amounts of money for this race. He's working hard. He's going to win by 7 to 10 points. Brian is trying to throw out some innuendos and gossip.
Mario, but Mario, to be fair, a lot of people have said that.
Brian, the problem is the Democrats try to claim that the Republican Party is old white men. When we have a candidate such as Diego, it infuriates them. So first they try to say
we're not infuriated by him, but the fact is he was fired by Todd Rokita. And he has a very sleazy business and political background. The truth hurts, doesn't it?
Diego running for office because that goes against their narrative. He's a military. He's experienced.
Mario, let me jump in. What about? Hold on, Brian. Let me talk. Brian, what about? Mario, rather. What about the claims that Brian made? And he's not the only one to make these claims that Diego Morales is an election denier.
He has stated that there were problems with this last election. And I don't disagree with him that there were problems. You look at Pennsylvania.
It was 60 cases all over the United States, and Trump lost every one of them.
Brian, can let him answer.
I don't know if it's even worth trying to talk over Brian because he can't let someone speak.
Go ahead, Brian.
You're not going to filibuster, buddy.
It actually was just my turn to talk, Brian, and if you can't hear another side, this just goes to show the viewers out here why the Democrats are going to lose, because they're not willing to listen. They just want to yell and scream. And that shows the character of their candidates. They don't have any actual opinion or views. They just love screaming and yelling and yelling at people instead of talking to people. And that's what Diego's been doing.
All right. Well, Brian, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Go ahead, respond to Mario. 30 seconds.
Well, Mario, that as usual, you were grandstanding, and what you said was totally disingenuous. I was not yelling and screaming, but you're not a U.S. senator, therefore you're not going to filibuster during these debates. The fact is I'm talking now. The fact is that Diego Morales has a very sleazy business background. He was fired by Todd Rokita, and that's saying a lot considering Todd Rokita has a very sleazy
gentlemen,
background.
we will leave it there. We have much more to talk about on the other side of the break.
He's losing this race, and he will lose.
All right. We'll see you on the other side of the break. Thank you. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics. Mario and Brian still with us here. Let's turn now, gentlemen, to what we learned this week, that Indiana plans to charge income tax on student loan debt forgiven by President Biden's plan. Mario, is this really a smart move by state Republicans?
One of the biggest problems with this loan forgiveness is I'm not sure that it's legal. The president doesn't have the authority to do that. I think there's going to be a lot of federal lawsuits being brought regarding the legality of it. So I think that's the main issue here, because there is a number of Hoosiers and Americans that weren't able to and not fortunate enough to go to college, and they're the ones paying for this loan forgiveness. And so I think this tax it is right, because it's basically trying to buy votes. That's what Joe Biden is trying to do by waiving $10,000 to $20,000. He's trying to buy votes just before an election, the midterm. And, I think that this is going to get struck down by some federal lawsuits.
Brian, your thoughts?
Well, as usual, the Republicans are being disingenuous when they worry about working class and middle class families getting student loan relief, when you don't hear that same type of indignation when millionaires and billionaires are getting tax cuts. So their hue and cry is just, as usual, the phony hypocrisy that you get from the right. Quite frankly, Mario, your protestations about what's going on and what's legal and what's not.
Okay, so let me just jump in real quick and I ask you both again. about the income tax, because we kind of danced around it from both of you. So, Mario, we'll go back to you. Is this a good idea?
You know, I think it is, you know, because of the fact that, you know, it is basically income. It is basically, you're getting paid by having this loan forgiven. And what it's actually doing is it's actually causing more hyperinflation. By waiving $10,000 to $20,000, you're not stopping this inflation problem. What you're going to actually do is create more inflation. You're dumping gas on the fire.
Brian, rather.
Mario, you need to read the Wall Street Journal or watch CNBC a lot more often, because inflation's going down. So that's just a red herring about inflation going up and that being hyperinflation. The fact is, I don't believe that taxing these student loan relief is a wise idea at all. And I think it will definitely boomerang back on the Republicans. I think it's a political loser, and it's actually a politically stupid move to actually do it.
Well, that's the perfect segue to this next question, Brian. A prediction from each of you. Will lawmakers change this when they get back to the Capitol in January? Brian, start us off.
I hope so. They should. I mean, if they continue to keep this taxing student debt relief for working and middle-class families, it's going to definitely boomerang back on the Republicans. So if they were smart, they would definitely not do it.
Mario, they're going to change this or what? What do you think?
You know, I think that there's going to be discussion on if, you know, what kind of impact, what kind of economic impact it would create by taxing these student loans. I think that, you know, Biden, by forgiving these student loans just before an election, we don't know that impact. You know, there have been, you know, the Congressional Budget Office, there have been other, you know, groups like Moody's that have said that every American is going to have to put down at least $2,000 to pay for this. And so I think that, you know, the legislature is wise enough that they're going to kind of look at the numbers, look and see what the ramifications are by taxing it, and if it is a, you know, cost-benefit analysis.
We'll have that discussion in January, of course. I want to turn our discussion right now to the abortion topic and the new lawsuit saying the ban violates RFRA. Brian, is there still realistic hope that this law doesn't take effect on Thursday?
Well, we don't know. I mean, you've got religious groups that are suing because they believe it violates, I think it's a Jewish group that's suing, yes, because it doesn't go along with the Jewish faith. The concept of conception is a Christian conception belief, religious belief, and that doesn't necessarily go with the Jewish faith and the Muslim faith. So we don't know. I mean, it very well could not take effect, and we'll just have to see how it plays out in the courts.
Mario, your thoughts?
I think this is kind of a fascinating argument. You know, I've read the complaint, you know, but it's kind of like in law school, we used to have blue books. They gave you a fact pattern and you just threw things out there that were curious and interesting, trying to teach, show the teacher that, you know, you're creative. This is a creative argument. It's a nothing burger. It's, you know, it's not going to stop this law from going into effect. So while creative and, you know, curious and interesting, I don't think it's going to have much impact on the law.
So would you think it's more of a poke in the eye to conservatives?
Yeah, total poke in the eye to the conservatives. I mean, and honestly, I love it. I like it in the sense that, you know, they're using humor in some ways to try and poke at the conservatives. But again, it's a fascinating argument, but no court is gonna, you know, stay the law. That
Brian, as far as the politics go, does it make it easier, a case like this, for folks to come out and vote in November?
Mario just insulted Jewish and Muslim Hoosiers by saying what they believe in is a nothing burger. So you probably blew the Jewish and Muslim vote for the Republicans, Mario. That's just how ridiculous and stupid the remark you just made. I really believe, quite frankly, that this will have to play out in the courts, and we'll just have to see where it goes. I'm not going to just make the spurious specious argument that Mario just made by saying, "Oh, it's a nothing burger," and it's a poke in the eye to conservatives. I mean, talk about hubris.
Mario, I'll let you respond. If 30 seconds left. Mario, go ahead, respond. 30 seconds.
I have a lot of Muslim and Jewish friends, and they were in favor of this abortion bill. So I don't think that most Muslims and most Jewish people, if you understand their religion, it's like
you just said it was a nothing burger. That's an insult. That's an insult to them.
Would be in favor of abortion. So
you just insulted Jewish and Muslim Hoosiers by saying that's a nothing burger. You actually owe them an apology by saying that.
Sure.
Happy Sunday, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us as always.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Take All Indiana Politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
And thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll watch the courts for what happens this week on the abortion lawsuit all week long. We'll also be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. Stay with us for our season premiere of Countdown to Kickoff with AC and his team at 11 a.m. And remember, today's 9/11. 21 years ago, more than 3,000 people lost their lives. I know it's football Sunday, but let's remember all of their lives lost. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.